Hello, I'm Dan McGrath, Industrial Automation Solutions Manager at Panduit. I'm an industrial automation professional for 28 years, implementing automation and industrial network MES systems for Panduit globally. And one of the most frustrating skills gap areas of my career has been industrial networking. So I really got involved, took a lot of ISA courses through the years, and here today to just go through a few resources about training and certifications that may help this competency area in a critical area. We've heard at the session how cybersecurity is so critical and it's a team sport. We really need more collaboration and more ways to build careers in this space. The first point is that with Internet of Things and all the value at stake, this is becoming even more critical, right? This convergence topic. How do we have IT and operations technologies work together? We keep talking about this as a critical skill gap area. I think many of you have seen this in your own plants where there's downtime or a security episode, right? That maybe you pin down to, well, they just didn't understand the systems. So if you agree, there's a real need there to close that gap, and we need those standards and models and competency models from the ISA, but also look to how do we bridge that gap between IT and OT. So what we've been doing, I'm Panduit's representative for Industrial IP Advantage, which is an organization formed with Cisco, Rockwell Automation, Panduit, and cooperation of the ODVA to help bridge that gap, provide educational resources. And we see that control engineers really need to know more about how to design converged networks, and that IT as well needs to have more understanding of the challenges on the plant floor about security, remote access, how do you segment networks. And it really sets up an opportunity to build that manufacturing IT career. So as I said, Industrial IP Advantage was formed as a resource center. You can see the URL there. We have white papers, how-to guides, case studies, as well as we're launching an e-learning course, a 16-hour of e-learning that will teach about design and architecture. We're really taking a life cycle view of it. If you look at this slide, the industrial network architecture green box is what Industrial IP Advantage is tackling with e-learning. We're really focusing on the early stages in a project. How do you propose and architect industrial networks? And we're also pointing at industry certifications that are becoming more critical for security and wireless and network deployment, being the Cisco certification such as CCNA, and the new CCI-NS, Industrial Network Specialist certification that was just launched in 2014. And there are training courses now available that can give you instructor-led background and training in how to deploy this type of network infrastructure, the IM-INS course. And then, Panduit's side, if you don't know Panduit, we're a billion-dollar company focused on infrastructure. So many of you know us from electrical products, wiring duct, cable ties, but we also do fiber optics, racks, cabinets, physical infrastructure for large data centers and enterprises. And our practice, we often run into pictures like this. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these overgrown networks in industrial applications, but the physical layer, the physical infrastructure, that's critical backbone for IoT or any other industrial application can really be a key area of security lapse or downtime risk. So Panduit does offer e-learning and classes that can complement what you can learn through the ISA and other sources, and help you scale networks from the enterprise to the plant floor. So again, I'd say, you know, not only is security a team sport, but industrial network design is a team sport. And we need collaboration between IT and OT. And look at resources from ISA and from the vendor community to help build the skills. Thank you.
So we got quite a breadth of people here on the panel. So I got some focus more on the training side, and then we've got some end users as well that talks about their programs. What kind of questions do you folks have?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. I have a daughter that's in her third year in computer science and real familiar with that. You know, the cool thing for her is to build an app, and you know, manufacturing doesn't seem to be that fit for her, and you know, we have discussions around that often. And one thing we are doing as a company is looking at new technologies and how to bring those in, whether it's wireless, whether it's iPads, whether it's the coolest technology. We have people that look at those technologies and determine is there ways we can innovate and do applications with those and really attract people, because you're exactly right. The younger crowd definitely is wanting those cool technologies that run on wireless devices, and those are things that we have groups that work on those, but it's a challenge for the industry, I think, as far as getting that young talent and keeping that talent interested in the things we're doing. But I think it's just continuing to build on that and trying to get people involved in those activities and getting innovation and new ideas.
What would it take to even work with a vendor or your network vendor? Like, I mean, is that like too far-fetched?
I don't think that it's too far-fetched. I think that, I don't know if anyone else was there was a workforce session on Monday where there were 3 millennials that were up there, new to their careers, talking about their experience at their first job at a big company. And to be quite honest with you, it freaked me out. These folks are so quick to change. If they see a better opportunity somewhere else, they will leave in an instant and not look back, which is very difficult as an employer. You know, what we try to do, again, going back to intern programs and trying to get people while they're still in school and expose them to what it is that we do and what it is that we really value as a business, and show them that there is some value to having a solid foundation in your career. At the same time, we do want to be innovative. So from a corporate IT standpoint, we have to be able to build infrastructure in a way where we have guest networks or we have isolated networks that are off and you know, in no way could damage any of our production or safety systems, but still give folks the ability to bring things in and try new things out to see if it's going to work or add value. Now, we try to keep that as limited in scope as we possibly can, but at the same time, you have to allow some flexibility. You have to allow people to experiment a little bit. That's where the true innovation is going to come from anyway. So we try our best. I mean, it's a very difficult balance.
Does anybody else want to comment on that question?
I'll take a crack then. I think, first of all, ISA does do something with that. One of their strategic goals is called Coolest Delivery, and it's app development for what's going on in society. And just another example I'm thinking is the ISA 99 wiki. You know, where you can post anything basically, but I mean that's how you get up to speed on what's happening in the ISA 99. That's the Cybersecurity Standards Committee. So, but I wanted to comment a little bit differently and kind of twist that a little bit. Another shameless plug for another organization my company belongs to is MCAA, Measurement Control and Automation Association, I think it is. It's really built for the manufacturers of such in the industry. And last year at their annual meeting, they had a presentation. Bridgeworks, I think, was the presenter, but they presented on the 10 attributes of millennials, and I was fascinated by how that was presented. And in my mind, and I can't speak to that necessarily right now because I don't have anything to speak to, but you would play to those strengths. You know what those attributes are, and then you just design to what their strengths are, but rather than try and figure out, look through our lens and trying to figure out something that might appeal to them. See what I'm saying? And Dr. Peter Martin gives a great presentation on the future of millennials in automation, which I wish I had it here. I'd give it to you. But I think we're trying to pay attention to that.
And I would just add that a lot of the training courses, computer-based training, you always think about, but how many people use a computer at home anymore, right? So I think as we launch training, we really need to make sure they run on mobile platforms and are consumable, and also that mentality of, okay, I remember taking that, can I go recall that later and be able to access that particular training when you're in the heat of the battle.
I'll add one little thing to that, and that is the approach I found that worked for me in the past in attracting, and in my case, we got oil refineries, we're dealing with hydrocarbon under high pressure and high temperature, we're dealing with hydrogen. That has to be done safely. So we're really looking for people like chemical engineers. So to attract the best chemical engineers, we had the process control program and optimization program was a real cool thing. It was cutting edge. It was exciting for a chemical engineer. And if you can present something like that to to attract the people, then you will get them to come in because they're got an opportunity to do something that really hasn't been done before. And that was very, very successful. On the other hand, when it becomes stale, when it's all done and you're just maintaining it, then you have to find a way to retain those good people, and that's usually done by finding another challenge for them, or by that time they're probably interested in more money and promotion.
You and I would then.
One thing I'd like to add is at ARC we also look at the trends in technology, and one of those trends is cognitive computing. Have you heard of that? Okay, you've heard of Watson from IBM? That's cognitive computing. So that's the cognitive, yes. So that's the ability for a computer to be able to pull that. Well, that is, but think about Siri. It's on your Apple. If you could get that data searchable, and you could call, you get your iPhone out and say, hey, Siri, where's all the data on this pump? I need some help. It's doing X, Y, Z.
But it's nice to talk about. It seems like it's difficult to deploy or actually have. I mean, the people who are deploying like the Watson type stuff right now, that's the medical community.
Right.
That's like you're searching through tons of data and spending a lot of money to do it.
Right. Again, it's an emerging technology, right? So right now it's very expensive, very prohibitive, and it takes a lot of effort to get it going. So that's where we're at today. But if you think 5 years from now, it could be commonplace because of the way technology advances and the cost reduction that we see in those things. So that's something I would expect to see very shortly. Any other questions? Rick?
So, looking at IT and any company may not know the outsourcing, first of all, I go with good people, because we could use these IT people, you know. And how do we make sure that nobody has to create the IT of outsourcing OT as well?
another question for me? I'll take it.
You gotta love your coworkers.
Rick and I work for the same company.
Loaded question, huh?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. Great question. It is a challenge with the amount of outsourcing that's going on today in the traditional IT space, because there is a lot of talent and a lot of knowledge in-house in those organizations. And when you outsource, you do run the risk of losing some of that talent, and that's a big, big challenge. I think the key to it is you just got to balance and have people that understand the amount of knowledge and balance the load of, trying to have as many processes in place to document, the processes that run your business, and also have people that understand the requirements of what you're trying to do, and bringing those together and working with the different groups, whether it's corporate IT or whether it's embedded IT in the business or manufacturing IT or OT or third-party integration services. It's bringing those together and working with them and understanding. It's not a simple answer, but it's bringing all those groups together and trying to find the right solution for the business. And it is a challenge with outsourcing in general that happens across the industry, I think, with losing talent.
Just a comment on the outsourcing of OT. I think that we're much farther off from that than we are outsourced IT. Over the last 10 years, most IT functions have become commoditized. It's much, much cheaper, not necessarily outsource the people, but to purchase those services wholesale from somebody else that's all they do. Email, for instance. OT and the personnel that you're looking to hire into an OT position, they have to have intimate knowledge of the way your business works, which is going to be unique to your business. Taking and transplanting a controls engineer or an OT professional from one business to the other is not nearly as simple as an IT professional. There's a lot of retraining. There's a lot of very specific knowledge that they would have to relearn if they moved. So they're, I think, culturally less likely to make that shift. That's not to say 10 years from now we won't be having the same conversation about OT people moving around fast, but I think for now it's relatively stable.
I think I can help with a real example. About 10 years ago, we outsourced IT, and it was quite an experience. There were 10 portfolios of applications. We had something like 3,000 applications in the company when we counted them all up. My area, which was operations and in the plants, had about 300, about 10% of that. And the infrastructure was easy to outsource. The applications on the other applications, like financial, like even maintenance, they were okay too. But when it came to the operational stuff that was running the plant, and also the process control stuff, which reaches out and turns the valves. And if you turn valves right in an oil refinery, good things happen. If you turn valves wrong in the refinery, things go bang, equipment gets broken, people get hurt or killed. That stuff went back to the operating plants. We did not dare to outsource that stuff. We had to have our own people knowledgeable with the experience because it's critical. And by the way, if you've ever been involved in a fatality, you know how damn critical that gets real fast.
Ed, you had a question? Have you seen that Siemens ad where the guy's got the Google glasses and he's working on the stadium lights? No, you haven't seen that? That's almost exactly what it is. And then he's got real-time talking to somebody at a remote operations center, helping him out, and he's pulling up the help on his glasses while he's working on the stuff. So it's not as far off as it seems. Right, there's several examples of that already. Mm-hmm. Right, and that's an example of augmenting the expertise on a rig, which is hard to get to or expensive to get to, with expertise in a center of excellence, which you mentioned.
And I think, just to comment on both of those comments, and feeding back into the Googling, right? Everyone can find out whatever answer they want on the internet these days. When it comes to simple problems or simple problem solving, I think that works. The problem is when you get into complex systems, or when you get into architectures or design, there's no, you might be able to gather the 150 points of data that you might need by Googling one afternoon, but even millennials will reach out to their peers and they'll want to have that peer-to-peer interaction in order to work through those complex problems. And I think that's why I think it's very critical in any training program, technical or otherwise, that you focus on communication skills, because those are just as critical as the wealth of technical knowledge that a person might have.
Yes.
Tim Feldman with ISA. How, to anybody really on the panel know, how important is it for you to know what your people know? And how do you know what they know?
Or how do you don't know, or you don't know what they don't know?
I guess it depends on what area of knowledge you're talking about.
Just something that
But-
I'm familiar with, and I
Yeah.
don't mean this to be a crass commercial announcement, but the ISA CCST level 321, or one of the Cisco credentials, say something that they're really committed to knowing what their people know, a certificate or a certification, and there's others that just don't care.
I'll let these guys talk about that who are more familiar with those programs, but my first response to that is the criticality. It's the criticality of what you're looking at. In our case, where you've got plant operations involved and you've got high risk, that you have to know what the people know and you have to know what they don't know before you send them out there, because they can make a bad mistake. We had a young operator that went to swing some vacuum tower bottoms pumps one morning in 2003. There was a leak, it auto-ignited, and he didn't get out of the fire. So those kind of things can happen, and you have to know before you send that young fella out there how he's been trained, what he knows, and what he doesn't know, and what he knows in order to figure out when things are going to go wrong and how to deal with them. So, but if it's plugging up a few network cables, maybe you don't need that kind of that's not that critical.
Anyone else want to comment?
Well, I mean, I agree that industry certifications are exceptionally important. To me, I don't want to say my career has been based on it, but I've continually gone after industry standard certifications because it's an instant way, maybe not to prove completely to somebody that you know what you're talking about or you know what you're doing, but it's much faster than having to prove through work experience to a company or to a business that you know what you're doing. You know, it might take someone 3 or 4 years to gain confidence in you working in a particular role, but if you come in with a well-known, well-respected certification portfolio, you can walk in the door much better off. And I think that the key to that is industry standard certification, well-respected certifications. There are some certs out there that don't really hold weight. There are some that do.
Yeah, I think it gives you that technical foundation.
I think, quite honestly, it gets back to the culture issue in that the operator should not be the engineer, period, or the technician. He needs to understand his process, but I mean, in terms of who the engineer, if there are issues in a process upset somewhere, he needs to relay that information to his engineer. And so if companies let the operators do that, then they've created that culture, and that's a bad thing in my mind. So.
The operators from any other location are chemical.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
The operators at a certain level, with reason, because they have less people running the process and they want more qualified people running those processes. So that's where the risk will come, right?
What worked? What
About the program control system.
did you get?
I didn't hear what you said.
Didn't catch that. What worked well for us was that in the Sarnia area, we call Chemical Valley, there's quite a few plants, different companies. We got together and with the local college, and we defined the 3-year technology program for process operators. We also had previously worked with the college to define the instrumentation and electrical certification program. We then made those a co-op program and committed to bringing those young fellas in during their work terms into our plants for on-site training. And then we also committed to hiring those young people when they graduated, and it gave an opportunity for the local young folks to get a good paying job. And it worked very well, but we started out also that we wouldn't hire off the street without those certifications. And in the instrument part, we demanded that ISA training be part of that. And also that we structured the program to have both the necessary technical courses as well as the soft courses like communications, like working in groups, like conflict management and those kind of things. So at the end of 3 years, by the way, they also had a STEAM ticket, we were getting people who were highly trained, highly knowledgeable, and then all we had to do was train them in what the specifics of our Pacific plant was that was different from their training. And the whole industry in that area of Michigan and Ontario has benefited as a result of that program, and it's still ongoing and it's well recognized now.
Did you have, yeah.
Just to add, I think that's an excellent point, that I think that if businesses are not satisfied with the level or quality of the people that are coming out of the colleges, the community colleges or the 4-year degree programs, it's the business's responsibility to take that back to the college, back to the education system. I mean, somebody mentioned earlier, colleges are businesses too. If you invest in the education system in your area, around your businesses, they will invest in your future employees.
Go ahead. I'm too young to take that question.
Okay, I'll start. Well, you just hit the nail on the head when it comes to trying to attract talent for automation, because nobody knows what it is. And as such, what we've done as Automation Federation is support such organizations as FIRST. And it's been a real thrill to go to their, unfortunately, I'm from St. Louis, and their international championships are in St. Louis every year. They have been for the last several years. And to have these kids come up, does everyone know what FIRST is, the acronym? Okay. You don't? Okay, it's an acronym. It's an organization started by Dean Kamen, who the man has 400 some odd patents, that invented the Segway and the iBot and all of this. But I mean, his vision was to create an atmosphere for young people to see that the real rock stars don't have guitars or play basketball or whatever, they're engineers. And so this is about the only continuous technical education program that starts at 3rd grade and runs through high school with varying degrees of, it starts with what they call a Lego League, and then there's a technical challenge that, when I was a kid, looked like the director said I used to have. You build something to a problem, to solve a problem, and then the high level is the international robotics competition. There's a lot of corporate sponsorship that goes on to create the team and to get them the materials they need to create the robot, which again is to solve a specific problem, and then they compete for that. There's probably there's around 35 or 40,000 people that show up at this event every year for a week in April in St. Louis, Missouri. But again, it's not about the robots. It's about critical thinking. It's about development as a technical person, as a career. Again, it was very fulfilling for me to have a booth there. We're a strategic partner with FIRST, and so we man a booth, and the kids and their parents come around, and their coaches and whatever. And the first thing, we have a big sign that says automation is cool. And the guy says, what's automation? I said, so the real simple answer right off the bat that gets their attention is, well, did you have fun? Did you enjoy yourself? Were you thrilled to be on this team to create this robot? And he said, well, yeah, it was great. And I said, how'd you like to do that for a living? So then that kind of that always sets a light off in their heads. So I think we have to start at a young age in terms of trying to make this career much more attractive than working in industry. You know, we've always fought the barrier in terms of, well, you don't want to work in industry. Uncle Charlie worked at the Ford company and he got laid off. You know, you don't want to go there. Well, that's a perception that has to be, that's generational too, that has to be dispelled. Whether it's true or not, it has to be dispelled if we're going to get these new people. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just add one little thing then. That is, FIRST stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. And I first heard about it at an automation conference by the ISA right here in Orlando. And interestingly enough, the national competition was being held at Disney World. And you know, that was pretty exciting for these kids to win their way to a free trip to Disney World for a week.
By the way, I think the website is usfirst.org.
And as far as engaging in the job satisfaction, retention of experienced workers that are charged with fixing things and break fix, I think transitioning to more proactive kind of continuous improvement teams, doing pilot projects together where you take training, map out a target that you're going after for improvement, can drive recognition and job satisfaction.
One more comment, not about FIRST this time, but one of your contemporaries, well, he was until he retired, several years ago, was with me, and we were on a government relations trip in Washington, D.C., calling on the Hill. And he's a senior engineer from Dow Chemical. And he said he was recruiting double E's with the intent that he wanted to recruit them to be automation engineers. And the truth of the matter was he talked to 11 people, only 3 of which were even came close to being acceptable to even interview, to take it past the first interview. And then what he said was it takes 3 to 5 years to create an automation engineer after hiring them as a double E straight out of college, because it's all theoretical. So companies that have the foresight to do co-op programs and things like that are going to be miles ahead and can instill the culture while they're doing that as well. I think that's a great thing.
I would like to add, I think retention is also a function of the culture. If you have a culture that values the employee will stay. If he just feels like he's another piece of the machinery, then there's no value to him staying. There's no emotional engagement, and so I think again we have to understand our culture. Usually, when you interview, you're trying to look for a cultural fit, but when we hire, we can't hire widgets. We're hiring people. There's an emotion. Your culture needs to feed that emotion.
Mark, just to your point, one of those attributes we talked about of millennials that was in part of that presentation was that they feel strongly that they have to be a part of the solution, so not just participants. And so with that said, if that is the culture, then that is a means to keep them, for sure.
Yeah, they're not going to work for nothing, but you know, you got to keep up with the market from a salary standpoint. But culture is a big deal. Okay, that's actually at the very end. We're at the end of the hour, or half hour, 5:30-ish. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope you've gained something out of the panel. Thank you very much, panelists.